Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are discussing the important topic of jihad in these sessions of rediscovering Islam. Today is our third session on the subject. Whenever we talk about anything that has got to do with Islam, we should try to place it in the overall picture, the overall presentation that the Almighty has done of His message. Uh, it is only through that way that we can understand the message of that particular topic as well as the overall presentation of the Almighty's religion properly. Otherwise, otherwise we will have fragmented, broken concepts in our mind, which would always keep our minds confused, would never be able to enable us to have an integrated, full, complete picture of the Almighty's religion, which is what we all ought to try to always achieve. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it is that we are talking about jihad. And what we have seen is that in the Quran, the Almighty has presented the entire concept of jihad in a way that he is helping people to understand why jihad should be fought. I mean, the Almighty could have said straight away, go and fight. I, your Lord, am telling you, do it. And believers would have done it. But he didn't do it like that. He actually clarified, answered questions that arose. So today I'm going to talk about one very important aspect of jihad, and that is the moral limits, the moral expectations that believers are expected to always remember, preserve while they are undertaking jihad. Imagine jihad is fighting others, and yet we are expected to make sure that we are within the boundaries of morality. Why? Because the entire religion is about tazkiyah. The goal of Allah's message is that we humans, when we believe and we practice God's religion, we are able to, on the one hand, cleanse our body, cleanse our edibles, the food that we eat, and we also cleanse our morality. And through this cleansing process, we are able to then realize the inner hidden potential of our self, which the way it has been designed, it enables us to become excellent human beings by being good to fellow humans and by being good with the Almighty in our contact with Him. That is what Tazkiyah is all about. It has two aspects. One is cleansing, and the other is progressing, strengthening, developing. The idea is that we all have a great potential of making progress, as I said, with fellow humans in morality, with the Almighty in our contact with us. But this potential is prevented from being properly realized by our weaknesses. What are those weaknesses? Well, basically two: our ego and our desires. So, what the Almighty's message does is that it enables us to be cleansed from inside. We check our desires, we check our ego as a consequence of following the Almighty's message. And when we do it, those breaks that prevent our inner self to be able to realize its full potential, those breaks are released. And our inner personality gets the opportunity of growing. Now, What I was saying was that no matter what topic you discuss about the Almighty's religion, you must ask this question: where exactly is it contributing towards tazkiyah? So, jihad has obviously other dimensions too, and the Almighty himself is clarifying. But today I'm going to talk about the fact that, true to his promise, obviously the Almighty always makes promises that he fulfills. True to his promise, this aspect of his religion, jihad, also conforms to, is consistent with the ideal of tazkiyah, morality. That is why the Almighty says in the Quran, don't you ponder over the Quran? Don't you try to understand the Quran and reflect upon it properly? Because had it been from anyone other than Allah, you would have found in it lots of discrepancies, contradictions. It cannot possibly be done by anyone except our Creator, who is perfect. That He says whatever He says in His message, which is consistent. So, one part of the message and the other part, they're all coming together, converging to achieve one common goal, and that is tazkiyah. So, jihad, as I said, is also serving the same purpose, that it has its moral limits which believers are expected to always conform, always abide by. Even while in the battlefield, uh, believers are expected to remain within moral limits. I mean, it's amazing. And this is what we find from the Quran, we find from Hadith. We've already seen this verse, and I want to just mention it again. The Almighty says, Ash-Shahrul Haram Bish-Shahril Haram. The sanctity of the sacred month can only be justified if the sanctity of the sacred month is observed by others as well. But if others violate it, then you're allowed. Otherwise, you're not allowed. Wal hurumatu qisas. Likewise, there is retribution against violation of other entities that are sacred. So, for example, human life is sacred. You can't violate its sanctity. But if the same life takes the life of another, then you can punish this life by being taken. That is the retribution of violating the sanctity of an entity. So that is the principle that the Almighty has mentioned. Imagine the Almighty is helping us understand that if you have this confusion, remove it. What I am saying is exactly consistent. There are no contradictions. Now, we may still have questions, but honestly, the more you go deeper into the message of the Almighty, the more you feel, oh my goodness, I mean, this is amazing. And that is what makes you feel comfortable and confident. So it goes on to say, فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. So, therefore, if you've understood this principle, if somebody goes against you, transgresses against you, فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ, then you are also allowed to take revenge. بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ, the way he has transgressed against you. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ, fear Allah. That is, even while doing it, be conscious of the presence of Allah. وَعْلَمُوا, and be absolutely clear, أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, that God is with those who are God conscious. In other words, and we'll talk more about it later, if you think that you are fighting for a good cause, then you've got to abide by those principles of morality, otherwise God is not going to help you. And quite often we ask this question, where is God? I mean, he promised us. Why is he not helping? Well, it's because there are certain things he demanded from you. If you're not going to abide by them, then blame yourself. Of course, you can't blame God. And he's true to his promise. Okay, now let's move on. So while after Itmamul Hujjah, I hope we know what Itmamul Hujjah is. That is establishing clear evidence something that can only be done by a messenger. Probably some other people might have done it, but we can never be sure. When a messenger of God comes to this world and he delivers the message of the Almighty beyond a certain deadline, what happens is that the Almighty declares it's all clear. Now, nobody can come up with an excuse that I don't know, I don't understand. People know and they reject. And when that happens, Muslims were allowed to fight against them. Why? Because again, the Almighty clarifies because this is going to be Allah's punishment inflicted upon those who reject it. It's like this that when the addressees of Nuh alayhi salam, they rejected him and the deadline reached. The Almighty ordered, required from water to be unleashed from all places, and they were all drowned. That was their punishment. Likewise, the case of other messengers. But the rule seems to be that if the companions of a messenger are large enough in number, then they will be employed as weapons and tools of the Almighty to inflict his punishment on those who reject it. So that is not something that you should look at from the point of view of Sharia. It will never happen again. It needs to have a messenger uh, right there, physically present to satisfy that condition. However, uh, even when they were fighting for the sake of the Almighty, inflicting punishment on the kuffar who rejected the truth knowingly, and it was Allah's punishment that was being inflicted upon them, even then, Muslims were required to satisfy two conditions. One condition was that they could not take lead in transgressing against any sacred entity. They were not allowed to do that. And number two, if someone transgressed against them, they could retaliate only as strongly as they did. They could not go beyond what the other party did. That's a must. This is what the Almighty continues to emphasize. Now, the most important moral principle that the Quran has talked about, honestly, in all aspects of human life in general, but particularly in this matter, is that you must abide by your commitments. If you have made a commitment with another nation, it is an absolute must that it should be satisfied. The covenants have to be honored. So in Surah Tawbah, by the way, Surah Tawbah we know is the only surah which does not begin with Tasmiyah, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. And obviously anything that you find different, kind of strange, you must ask why. Well, the answer is very simple, that Bismillah Rahman Rahim has the mention of Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the merciful God whose mercy is forever. And in Surah Tawbah, the Almighty is talking about his punishment that was to be unleashed on the people who did not deserve his mercy. And therefore they were punished. So he chose to not start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In that surah, the final punishment was announced against those who made commitments uh, and they violated. That is, people who rejected the message of the Almighty, even though they understood it properly, but they went against it and they reached a point beyond which it wasn't possible for them to reform. So they had become incorrigible. That is what the Quran keeps saying. Summum bukmun umyun fahum la yarjun. They are deaf, dumb, and blind. They're not going to return. So when that stage reached, uh, there was this jihad for the purpose of punishment declared against them. But action was not allowed against those tribes with whom the Prophet ﷺ had a covenant until such time that that particular commitment, its time expired. It was a time barred commitment. And the Quran itself declared that even though you are being asked to take action against all others who have rejected the truth, except for these people who are honoring their commitments, and therefore, so long as the duration of this covenant lasts, you will not take action against them. The other thing that the Quran mentions is, which is remarkable, in the preceding surah, Surah Al Anfal, Surah Tawbah is Surah number 9, Surah Al Anfal is Surah number 8. Allah binds Muslims to help those Muslims who seek help from them. You see, it was building up. Before the final decision declaration of the ultimate elimination of kuffar, there was these skirmishes, battles that were taking place. Muslims had migrated to Medina, and the kuffar, they did not want this state of Medina to get strong and thus become a threat for them. So uh, there were battles going on in different parts of the Arabian Peninsula. The Almighty, in that period, He asked the believers, وَإِنِ اسْتَنْصَرُوكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ, if there are some people anywhere who ask you for help, and the Quran does mention that there were many Muslims who were being tortured because of their religion. Fitna was taking place. If you are going to be asked for help, fiddin, in matter of religion, that is, people say that, we are desperate. We can't follow our religion. We are being tortured. For alaykum nasr, helping them is binding on you believers, illa except ala qawmim bainakum wa bainahum mithaq, except for those between you and whom there is an agreement. No war agreement. You can't fight. Even when there are Muslims over there who are actually genuinely feeling that they are being tortured. But the commitment is something that Muslims are to honor under all circumstances. There is a hadith that says that the Prophet ﷺ said that the one who kills a muahid is a person with whom you have a muahida, commitment, covenant. The one who kills him, he won't be able to get the smell of paradise, even though it would be something that people could smell from. It's interesting, from 40 years. It's not it's not distance of miles mentioned, it's distance of years mentioned, like we talk about light years. So, it that smell would be there in the atmosphere all around, but this person will not be able to smell it. That is because he killed somebody, obviously a non-Muslim, with whom there was an understanding that he has been provided with security by Muslims through their undertaking, commitment. However, however, obviously there are practical implications of this understanding. However, if there is a fear of violation from the other side, that is, you know that you have had a no war pact with another nation, the nation is prepared to just about attack you. So are you going to take it lying down? I mean, will you do nothing about it? So this is now something obviously which is practical. So the Quran says, وَإِمَّا تَخَافَنَّ مِنْ قَوْمٍ خِيَانَةٍ. If you fear from a nation betrayal, but they're just about prepared to violate it. فَانْبِزْ إِلَيْهِمْ عَلَى السَّوَاءِ. Then you also go against the understanding on equal terms. That is, if they are doing it, then you're also allowed to do it. But you cannot take a one-sided initial step to violate the covenant. If they start doing it, well, you have a right to do it on equal terms. And the Almighty says, "In Allah la yuhibbul khayni." Allah doesn't like those who betray. I mean, he's talking from the point of view of both believers and non-believers. So, moral expectations are extremely important. I mean, this is not my topic. We have talked about it before. You get the privilege of believing if you are morally upright. Somebody who's not morally upright can't believe. The Quran is very clear. Hadith is very clear. I mean, people think that we are Muslims, we are believers. Well, the Quran, Hadith, they tell us if you are a liar, a cheat, you're not a believer. So here the Almighty is saying that Allah does not like those who betray. So there should be a clear indication of betrayal on the part of the enemy. Uh, and the response from believers then is going to be measured. It cannot be, something that is much bigger than what the other party is doing. That again is a moral principle. You've got to continue to control yourself. A hadith clarifies that in a covenant with another nation that has a duration, no changes should be made unless there is a fear of betrayal, in which case it should be openly thrown on his face. That is, you have to say that from now on, there is no commitment between us that we'll not fight. Do it openly, throw it on their face, and tell them that you have started this. You have begun to violate it, and therefore we are not bound by it. So, you know what it means? What it means is that there is no room for any secret actions wherein you cross over the border of the enemy with whom you have an agreement and then start doing your own exercises to cause harm to others. This is mean. This is cheap. This is immoral. If you are doing it, then don't expect any help from the Almighty. Let's face it, we did it. For 14 years, we did it. People are very proud. We knew that it were our own young people who would go across borders and cause harm there in Kashmir. I'm not talking about what they do, but we did it. And there used to be bodies of people coming, and people would, from our own military, people would say janaza and say, these are shaheed. What are you talking about? We don't know what's going to be happening in the hereafter. Allah is the best judge. How can you violate the commitment that you have made to the other nation? You just cannot. If you are a believer, then it's not something which is acceptable. And if you're doing it, don't expect any help from the Almighty. He never helps those people who break their commitments. Now, there are some other morality related expectations from believers in times of war when they enter into, they are engaging in a battle. Number one, while moving towards a battle, there should be no show of arrogance or pomp. Uh, Jihad is a form of ibadat, and a servant of God is a humble person. He's not arrogant, he's not showing off. So the Quran mentions, for instance, in Surah Al-Anfal, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ خَرَجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ بَطَرًا وَرِئَاءَ النَّاسِ. Believers, do not be like those who left their homes arrogantly, وَرِئَاءَ النَّاسِ, showing off to people, وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and they stopped people from the path of Allah. That is, when you leave your homes, your cities for fighting for the sake, in the name of Allah, for the sake of earning His pleasure, you've got to be humble. You can't be arrogant. You can't show off, because Allah hates arrogance, and He would not like His believers to be indulged in any such behavior, which is against His expectations. Number two, Those who want to remain neutral in a war, they will not be targeted. So there are people who don't want to fight. I mean, they are weak. They don't have the kind of courage that they would get involved in a war, neither with you nor with the enemy. And they're telling you that, we don't want to have anything to do with it. Well, if that is the case, then they should be spared. They are not the ones that you should fight against. So the Quran says, for instance, about a group of people who are like that, Ja'ukum hasirat suduruhum. They come to you in a state that they do not have any courage. They don't find courage within themselves to fight. Ay yuqatilukum, they don't have courage to fight you. Aw yuqatilu qawmahum. Or neither they have courage to fight against their nation, the kuffar. They're just telling you that, look here, uh, we can't fight. So please spare us. The Almighty says, فَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبِيلًا. So Allah doesn't allow you to take any action against them. That again, if you look at it, is a very important moral principle. I mean, if somebody is a combatant who has come to fight you, you can fight him if the reason for fighting is clear. But if there are people within that group, that nation, who are telling you that we don't want to fight, we don't want to get involved. So the principle is you will spare them. There are exceptions mentioned in the Quran that some people might fool you by making that claim. But obviously, they are not going to be spared. That's something which is a very big evil. But if you are satisfied that these people, they're weak, they can't fight, just spare them. Number three, those who normally don't participate in wars, like women not don't normally participate. They should not be killed. They, even if they are there and they are not actively engaged in the battlefield, uh, and our bystanders are, are participating only indirectly, well, they should not be killed. When the Prophet ﷺ heard about a woman that she got killed, he gave very strict instructions that women should not be killed. You know, they don't normally fight. They have other things to do in life, but fighting is not, their forte. They don't have the kind of strength which men have, so they should be spared. Number four, uh, don't burn their corpses, their bodies. When you have gotten hold of the enemies, some of them have been killed, you have their bodies, don't kill them. But it's very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ, he instructed the companions who were going for a war, particularly about two individuals. You come across them, you burn them to death. He said about them. But then he later said, no, no, will not do that. Because burning is only God's prerogative. He can punish whom he wills, the way he wills. It's not for us humans to do it. Now, this incident is not the only incident. You find many other occasions in Hadith literature. Well, you find it in the Quran as well. That the Prophet ﷺ took a decision and then he withdrew it. He was a human. He would take decisions in the best of the intentions, spirits, whatever knowledge he had. But then on some occasions, the Almighty would correct him and he would get corrected. This is what is called, the Ambiya have protection. That is, they are protected from going wrong. Uh, it doesn't really mean that they can't do wrong. I mean, if they can't do wrong, then it is, there's nothing special than what they're doing, because they have been created, designed in a way They can't possibly go wrong. No, they take decisions sometimes which are not correct. And then the Almighty corrects them. So, we have a debate about the question of asmati ambiya. That ambiya are all free from errors. Well, they don't do anything wrong because of their desires or their ego. That is what they don't do because they are the best of humans. But they have their own intellect. They have their own way of deciding. They are obviously guided by the Almighty, but there are many occasions when they took decisions and the decisions were corrected. This is one of the examples. There are many examples in the Quran as well. For example, in Surah Tawbah, you find that the Almighty decided that in the Battle of Tabuk, all able bodied Muslim men will go to prove that they believed. Just to confirm their belief, they had to go, right? So, those able bodied Muslims who went, they were believers. Those who didn't go, they were hypocrites. And a clear dividing line was drawn. But you know what? The Prophet, ﷺ, the way he was, kind, caring, forgiving, making life easy for people. There were some people who came to him and they said, we have this and this excuse, so we can't go. And he said, okay, don't go. So the Quran said to the Prophet, ﷺ, it started like this: Afallahu anka. May Allah forgive you. Lima zintalahum. Why did you permit them? So he permitted and he was corrected. Why did you permit them until such time that it became clear as to who were the people who were truthful and who were the ones who were liars? So likewise, this particular incident should not come as a surprise. Uh, to begin with, he had a certain understanding based obviously on the Almighty's guidance, a general guidance. So what I'm trying to say is that like scholars form opinions, uh, the Prophet also formed opinion. Obviously, on many occasions, he was guided by the Almighty directly. The Quran is one, obviously, the biggest example. But even outside the Quran, he used to receive Jibreel alayhi salam, wahi, that would guide him. But sometimes he would take decisions not because the Almighty himself mentioned something directly, but because of the general understanding that he had and because of the nature that he had, he took decisions. Sometimes they turned out to be not spot on from the point of view of the wisdom and the strategy of the Almighty. So this is one of those occasions. Point number 5. That is, what are the areas which have been mentioned to the Muslims that they should take care of even while in war against others, while battling? Not to loot the belongings of others. That is, you have conquered, you have become victorious. But that doesn't really mean that you will snatch away, take away the belongings of others. So there was an occasion when the Muslims fought a war, they won it, and they were in the territory of the people whom they had overpowered, and they were very hungry. So they got hold of a few goats over there, slaughtered them, and prepared food. The Prophet ﷺ, when he came to learn about it, he was very upset. He overturned those cauldron, those dags, and you know the entire food was was wasted, destroyed. And he said, looted stuff is no different from the meat of dead animal. There's no difference. You can't do it. So imagine, I mean, you are getting your food, your wealth from a source which is illegitimate. It's just like haram food. There's no difference. So he just overturned all those dates, those cauldrons, and the food was not allowed to be. Sixth aspect of morality: dead bodies of enemies, they can't be mutilated. So I mean, they are dead. The dead body has to be respected. I mean, you can't show your anger that now that we have been able to overpower them, we're going to do whatever we want to. We'll show our anger and express it by cutting into pieces, which is what people do. Uh, the Prophet ﷺ instructed, clearly instructed believers not to do it. You know, they are dead. That's fine. That's it. The job has been done. Beyond that, we will not do anything. Point number 7. The Prophet ﷺ said, those who narrow the paths for people, uh, their jihad is not going to be acceptable. You're going for jihad, right? And what you're doing in the process is causing harm to people, not your enemies. In a combatant, in a battle where you're face to face with the enemy, obviously the idea is the enemy is to be defeated. But you are on your way and you are narrowing the paths of others. You are causing harm to others who got no direct link with your battle. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever does it, his jihad is not going to be accepted. It is mentioned whoever loots, his jihad is not going to be accepted. So, in other words, while you are engaged in an effort, in an activity which is done for the sake of the Almighty's pleasure, even then you're not allowed to be immoral. You're not allowed to be immoral. Now imagine the state of affairs that we have with us. Our scholars, they talk to each other on religious matters and even some minor aspects of disagreement. Look at the way people speak. I mean, you are trying to serve the cause of the Almighty's message and you are accusing others. You are doubting the intentions of others. You are trying to pick from the imagination, the thinking process, something that the person has not mentioned, speculating. And my goodness, you're going for a Jummah and you don't even care that your car is parked behind another car and you got no problems. And I have seen it on top of that, I don't know whether you experienced it or not. If God forbid, sometimes you have to in emergency, I think it's better not to say your prayer than to cause harm to somebody. But even if you were to park your car behind another car, you know what you will do? The first thing you will do is that after finishing your prayer, you will run towards your car so that it doesn't cause harm to the person whose car you have blocked. People, they would say they're sunnahs and they're nawafil, and they don't even know that the implication is that if you are doing anything immoral, your jihad, your prayer is not going to be accepted. So you see, this entire presentation of today regarding the moral aspects of jihad, they were actually a reminder of the reality that the religion of Allah is based completely on morality. And if there are certain things which are expected from the believer, which are of a nature that are seemingly, apparently different, and there is harm that is likely to be caused to others, even in those areas, the Almighty and the Prophet ﷺ have instructed believers to make sure that they strictly remain within the limits of morality. And it's not just a light, pleasant statement. The the reminder, the threat is that if you are going to do otherwise, your deed, your act of doing jihad is not going to be acceptable. It's going to be completely destroyed. So that's something of which we all believers ought to learn in every aspect of religion, every aspect of life that we are going through, because something that is so strictly implemented in jihad obviously has to be likewise implemented in all aspects of human life. As I said, even the case of prayers, and we're going to very soon start fasting. And there too, the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that the one who lies while fasting or acts upon lying, Allah is not interested that he remains hungry and thirsty. Why is he fasting? I mean, the implication is, why is he fasting? I mean, if while fasting, he's cheating others, he's lying or acting upon lies, then his fast is not acceptable. May the Almighty enable us to understand His religion properly and enable us to follow it to the best of our ability. I am now here to talk about any questions if there are there. And if there are no questions, it is even better.
हमें ख्याल आता है ये जहाज के बारे में जब अब डिस्कशन हो रही है कि एक जहाज से हमने गलत मतलब किया और ये अब जब हम पे जो है दूसरे लोगों की जान तान शुरू हुई, क्या इससे पहले भी तो ऐसा होता था? मतलब हम अटैक करते थे, लोगों पे जाते थे, जब हम पावर में थे, उस वक्त भी किसी ने इस पे बहस की थी कि ये हम गलत कर रहे हैं, ये जहाज नहीं है? और अब जब हम कमजोर हो गए और हम पे ऊपर से जो है वो चीजें आ रही हैं, अब मतलब कुछ लोगों ने इस पे गौर किया या सोचा और वो ये एक्सप्लेनेशन दे रहे हैं, जैसे आप हैं, हम मिसाल है, मैंने तो अभी ये सुना है। और एक मैं मिसाल देता हूँ, उसका इस बयान से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं, जैसे वो मोहम्मद इंजीनियर, वो जो उनकी किताबों के लाता है निकाल के, तो अब वो कुछ मौलाना हजरात कहने लगे ये किताबें बदल गई हैं या इसमें वो गलत लिखा गया। ये मैं एज ए एग्जाम्पल देता हूँ, तो अब हम क्या इसको ये एज ए एग्जाम्पल नहीं बनाने लग गए? मैं आपसे ये
जी, मैं I'm coming to you नजम साहब, मैं पहले इनके सवाल का जवाब दूं। लेकिन मैं आपको इसका कोई और तो रेफरेंसेस से जवाब नहीं दे सकता, लेकिन एक सादा बात जहन में आती है और आप भी इस पे गौर फरमाइए। मैं किसी को डिफेंड नहीं कर रहा, मगर ये हकीकत वाकया है, ये हमारा आपका इस वक्त का एक तकलीफ दे तजर्बा है कि भारत में हिंदू, सारे नहीं, बहुत से मुसलमानों के शदीद दुश्मन हो गए। उसकी बहुत सी वजूहत, मगर एक नुमाया वजह यह है कि वो कहते हैं तुम लोग किधर से उठ के आके हमारे ऊपर हुक्मरान बने थे। तो मैं आप ये बता रहा हूं, ये रिएक्शन होता है। अगर ना भी कोई बोले, वो अंदर ही अंदर एक नफरत पैदा हो जाती है कि भाई साहब आप कौन लोग थे, आप आ गए और आपने हमारे पूरे मुल्क पे कब्जा कर लिया और 1-2 साल नहीं, आप सदियों हमारे ऊपर काबिज रहे। ये वो नफरत है जिसका इजहार इस वक्त हो रहा है। मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि दे आर कंप्लीटली जस्टिफाइड, मगर व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज, यार और करना फॉर नो रीजन, आप जिसको कहते हैं पंजाबी मुंह चुक के आगे वहां से और आपने कहा पूरी इंडिया पे आप कब्जा कर लें। व्हाई? बिकॉज यू आर मोर पावरफुल। और पानीपत में एक लड़ाई, पानीपत में दूसरी लड़ाई, ये कोई आसान काम है? बंदे मरते हैं उसमें, आप बादशाह बन जाते हैं। सो सर, अगर किसी अव्वल तो एतराज किए हैं आई एम श्योर, लेकिन अगर नहीं भी किए तो ये रिएक्शन बता रहा है कि ये मामला जो है ये ऐसा ही है कि जब भी आप एग्रेशन शो करेंगे, लोग रिएक्ट करेंगे। अगर वो कमजोर है वो खामोश रहेंगे, वो आपकी बात मान लेंगे, लेकिन अगर वो मजबूत है और उनके पास जबान है तो बोलेंगे भी। जी नजम साहब।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। अच्छा, एक तो ये टेक्नोलॉजी मुझे समझ नहीं आती, बड़ी मुश्किल से मैंने हाथ रेज करने का ढूंढ लिया।
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कामयाब हो गए। अगर इंडिया की बात हो रही थी तो मैं इंडिया की जबान मुझे इस्तेमाल करने दें, आपको सफलता प्राप्त हो गई इसमें।
अच्छा, اچھا یہ جو آپ نے ابھی جو بھی لیکچر دیا ہے صرف اس کی حد تک مجھے ویڈیو ریکارڈ آپ شیئر کر سکتے ہیں, ناٹ اے لنک, مطلب جسٹ دا ویڈیو.
جی یہ انشاءاللہ ریکارڈ ہو رہا ہے, یہ میں آپ کو بھیج دوں گا انشاءاللہ.
جی ہاں بس یہ تھا, بہت اچھا رہا. مطلب مسئلہ یہ کہ قرآن کو میں تو پڑھتا ہوں, صرف ترجمہ پڑھ لوں تو تھوڑا غور کروں تو سمجھ آئی تھی. مجھے تفسیر پڑھنے کا کوئی زیادہ شوق رہا نہیں ہے, اللہ کا شکر ہے, مجھے تو ساری بات سمجھ آئی تھی. بہت شکریہ.
اوکے, میں انشاءاللہ آپ کو جیسے ہی آتا ہے وہ ہوپ فلی ود ان ویک آ جائے گا, تو آئی لیٹ یو ہیو.
انشاءاللہ, بہت شکریہ, تھینک یو. السلام علیکم.
چلیے جی, پھر میرا خیال ہے کہ بات مکمل ہوگی. اب ہم اگلے سنڈے تک کے لیے اجازت چاہتے ہیں. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ.